right, you told me that twice. I got it. I want to see them. Okay, welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen, Wenham Board of Selectmen meeting of Tuesday, January 9th. Welcome everyone. We did have an executive session prior to this, and we're going to go right into the public announcements. We're going to take one of these items out of order. Where is it?
It's old business.
Under old business, the used car dealer license renewals. After we go through the announcements, we're going to take it up right after that instead of later on in the meeting, which will mean the whole crowd will disperse right after that.
Well,
unless, of course, you've got nothing better to do tonight than sit around
I don't
and
have
listen to us.
anything better to do, so I'll stay.
Okay, we start off with announcements. We have retired Chief Bob Blanchard's retirement reception, Wednesday, January 17th, it's 6 to 8:30. Doesn't say so in here, but it's the Danversport Yacht Club. Tickets can be purchased online through January 11th, I believe.
Correct.
And that this is just cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, no formal announcements, which we're all very sad about that.
Right, we all wanted to make a speech. I know I did.
And that, so we're hoping there'll be a good crowd. And Bob has said, please no formal announcements, just a casual get-together and wishing him well in his retirement. And so that we'd encourage all of those who have known Bob, I think it's 28 years?
38.
38.
Years.
Wow. How many years was he the chief?
11.
I heard somebody say something.
I think it's 11. I think I heard him say 11.
Okay. Anyway.
A long time.
A long time.
And they've sold about 150 tickets so far.
179.
Oh,
Wow,
Well, who's counting?
that's 30 tickets in the past 2 hours, so. I hear a number.
In addition to online.
Raise your hand if you're online right now and you're buying it. 193.
Yeah, they can also buy them in Town Hall from Nikki, cash only for that, or online.
is there a cutoff number? I mean, should people be?
220.
Okay,
Yeah, so we're approaching
yeah,
that kind of.
that's very exciting.
We'll see you then, Bob. Good luck. Catherine, you have the next one.
I do, and I'm excited about this. The affordable, it's a reminder, we've talked about it before, the Affordable Housing Trust, of which I'm the representative of the Board of Selectmen, is holding a community workshop and free pancake breakfast to discuss our mission and an action plan, which is our mission is to preserve and create affordable housing in Wenham, and we've done that without a formal plan for a number of years. So we've hired a contract consultant to help us write a plan moving forward for affordable housing, and we really, the plan is meaningless without public input. So we're really trying to reach out to folks. We're offering them breakfast, we're offering them free childcare. I'm not sure what else we can offer them, but there's $1 million in the trust, and we'd like to know how people would like it to be spent, amongst other things. So the date of that is Saturday, January 20th. It's at 9:30 in the morning across the street at the new hall at the First Church. And again, Nikki Roebuck is the contact person. It's on, there are flyers around, it's on Facebook, it's in the library, it's hopefully being talked up at the Council on Aging. So we're really hoping to get a good turnout. That's all.
John, you're next.
I am. My conversation is to do with what we refer to as Wenham Connects. And I believe we have Jim Reynolds here. If you'd like to come up to the podium while I announce what's going on. We're trying to build a more vibrant sense of community for the older adults in town.
Excuse me, if you want to have a conversation, would you go outside? Otherwise, please hold it down. Thank you.
And what it consists of, we'd like you to be part of Wenham becoming a more vibrant community for the older adults. As I said, Wenham Connects is an exciting new initiative of the town of Wenham. We are building a vibrant, age-friendly community, and we are eager to hear the voices and ideas of older adults living in town. So I guess you're.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to talk for a second about
Yep. Why don't you do that?
Age and dementia-friendly initiative. Essentially, it's a World Health Organization program that's been kind of for the US is being delivered by AARP. And the only community that's really gone through the process is Salem at this point. And we're just eager to sort of jump on board because of all the various benefits of us finding better ways to connect more effectively with older adults in our community and so forth. So we've gotten pretty far. I've had a series of 3 working group meetings with senior care and as well as people from AARP and from the Healthy Mass and so forth. So basically where we are in the process at this point, we have our draft application complete, and then from that point forward, we have a year to conduct a survey. And I think we've made some contact with the UMass Center for Social Demographic Research on Aging to discover what costs are associated with the information gathering part of it. But it all fits really well within the context of our outreach to the community. So, and the most important part of my standing up here is just we're kicking it off with a listening session on Wednesday, January 24th, from 10 to 11:30, and we're looking for as much participation as possible in that to get us started. And in the newsletter, I've sort of spelled out the 8 domains of livability, which I just encourage you to take a look at. And we've also come up with our own age and dementia friendly survey, and we'll be working through all of that in the coming months. But yeah, we're going to kick it off with this listening session on the 24th with a snow date of Friday the 25th, same time, 10 o'clock.
Would it be fair to say, Jim, that this is not just for seniors? Because someday we'll all be seniors, or we have a senior parent or parents. Or
Yeah, I mean, I
others,
think connectedness would involve like all ages, including the children of older adults that might live in the community and or may not live in the community. It doesn't really matter. Their participation in this is important from the standpoint of a perspective in terms of ways in which we can get to them, communicate with them, get them involved. I mean, we're doing it on so many different levels with citizen leadership, and I think we have a great opportunity here to sort of just...
Yeah, I recall going through the experience with my mom.
Yeah.
And I really wish I had had better information and resources. Everything I learned was more by default, or I happened to run into somebody who would guide me to somewhere. And she struggled for many years with Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
But she was older before that, and, just wasn't as spry as she was at 25.
Yeah. Well,
Aren't we
I
all?
think that particular group is...
I even
think
remember
that-
25.
I think, dementia, the people with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are certainly an important target for this whole thing. And actually, there were 2 separate, there's an age-friendly initiative and then a dementia-friendly initiative that came behind it. They decided to put the 2 together because of the similarities associated. But yeah, I think there's a lot we can do to, improve the lives of people that are dealing with dementia, both the caregiver side and the people that are suffering.
Great. So join
Good luck.
Jim at the,
24th of January.
and it's going to be at the
It's 10.
senior center.
No,
it's right here in Town Hall.
It's here.
It's here.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, this
it's
is-
here
Oh, I
at-
didn't get that far.
Yep, just 10 to 11.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And we are going to do some additional follow-up sessions
Oh, yeah.
later in the spring. This isn't the one and only time that we're going to get input.
That's
Yeah,
good, because it's a
sort of
tough
just
time
kick
to,
off. Yeah, it might be
it's
kind of
it's a tough time
get
to,
a big crowd,
so it's
but-
great to have a couple
but
of
I
options.
think the main thing is getting started.
Mhm.
We just want to get started, and we want to be early. an early adopter. It's part of the whole senior cares efforts. They've done 4 sessions in Gloucester, Rockport, Manchester, and Essex. I went to the Essex one. It was great. It was really vibrant. There was a lot of conversation about people that are struggling with, caring for their elderly parent who has Alzheimer's. And, it's and discovering all the issues that are out there. Transportation is huge, more so in other communities than ours, because we have the ride and we have our own services, but it's weekend services and so forth. There's a lot of issues
Sure.
that we gotta sort of try and work on. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Jim. I love reading the Wenham Act as well. That, if I can't pronounce it right, I may have to go to that
Helps us feel
senior help.
connected,
No, it's anyway, it's very interesting. Okay, we have you, Catherine, requests for
Okay.
photos.
So the town of Wenham, in its interest of being more visually interesting, is requesting photos from our residents of town buildings, open spaces, recreational areas, and any scenic Wenham views, past and present, to use in our town publications and on the website. There is a release form and some restrictions, which I presume this release form is on our website.
Posted online, correct.
Posted online, and also, as always, seems to be these days, the contact person is Nikki Roebuck. So if you have photographs, please contact Nikki so that we can get them and get them in the format that we can use them and get a release to be able to use them. I believe that I read that the photographer will be credited.
Correct.
So it's just a matter of being able to use them in these public
Catherine,
documents.
Is this looking for more current photographs or
Doesn't-
historic?
It says
or-
old or new.
Okay.
It's like
Borrowed or blue?
any photographs that people may have or may be taking.
I mean, we've had discussions around, having more photos in the annual report on the town website as part of the 375th celebration. So I think it all ties together, which is why we're doing this kind of concerted outreach to ask folks for images.
Good. Nice.
Okay, and now we're going to switch, as I promised at the beginning after these announcements, to go to old business, used car dealer license renewals. This is a public hearing, and that I want to start off by inviting anyone up. This is Mr. Freeman at 3436 Arbor Street is requesting an annual renewal of his license to sell used cars, used vehicles, I should say, and that I would want to invite anyone up to the podium who wants to comment on this application by Mr. Freeman to continue his used vehicle sales at his residence. Okay.
No one wants to say anything? Okay. Please let us know your name when you get to the podium, even though we might know it. The viewing audience may not.
Dennis Carr at 32 Arbor Street. The only brief comment I'd have is my wife and I have owned that piece of property at 32 since 1990. My wife has lived there all her life, and it's not the business that it was before. When Mr. Freeman Sr. had the business, it was neatly kept. You barely knew that there was ever a business going on, and it's not that way today. And that's what upsets us. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else like to get up? Mr. Freeman, would you like to get up and make any remarks on behalf of your license application renewal? You don't have to, but I'm inviting you if you wish to do so. Okay. I guess we go right into, yeah.
So, right. So we had a discussion, an executive session
We did,
with Mr. Freeman.
we did.
Mostly, I think, am I right to say, about conditions that might be,
Yes, we had, this is our town's council in front of us here to make sure that we're not doing anything we're not supposed to do.
trying,
And that, so we want to be careful about this. And then we had a lively conversation with Mr. Freeman, who chose not to be represented by anybody, and that we expressed concerns that we had, that we've observed ourselves and have heard over the years, and that have discussed with Mr. Freeman making some possible suggested changes to his license, which I will be articulating momentarily. And that some of the these were agreeable with Mr. Freeman, some not so much. And that I'll again, at the very end of this motion that Catherine's going to read, I'll invite Mr. Freeman again, if he so wishes, to get up and talk about any of these restrictions. But none of these should be a surprise based upon the lengthy discourse we had with him early this evening.
Okay. Yeah. ready?
Yep.
So as Jack said, based on our conversation earlier in our executive session, I'm going to propose a motion for approval. The motion would be to approve the Class 2 license at Freeman. Now I should have a little more specific information probably. At
3436 Arbor.
3436 Arbor Street. And with the following conditions. The license would be restricted to operable Class D and Class M vehicles, and that's passenger cars and motorcycles for people that are wondering about that. As the license presently says, there is a 4-car garage and a 2-car shed on the property allowed. This motion would allow a total of not more than 20 cars permitted on the property, and 2 of those 20 cars may be parked in the front of the property. There would be hours of operation, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We also talked about the fact that as a sole proprietor, if Mr. Freeman is going to have any employees or contractors that he takes on during the year, that he brings the names of those people to the attention of the board through the town administrator, so that we're aware of any potential employees or contractors. Am I forgetting anything?
No, I'd like to add a little bit. That license of those 2 letters that Catherine just spelled out would not allow Mr. Freeman to sell buses or recreational vehicles or recreational vehicle trailers, which he both has on his property right now, and wouldn't allow, after a period of time, any inoperable vehicles on the premise. Currently, there are several.
If I could just make one clarification.
Yes,
I believe
please.
our conversation was that the restriction to Class D and M vehicles and the fact that they would be operable,
Yep,
as well as the total number of vehicles of 20,
right.
that those restrictions would not go into effect until July 1,
Correct.
Okay.
recognizing that it's going to take some time through attrition to deal with those other vehicles and the amount of vehicles.
So, I guess really, we could start saying with the hours of operation, 9 to 5, could start immediately, and then effective July 1? Is that an okay, proper way to say that? The license would be restricted to operable Class D and Class M vehicles, and secondly, 20 cars parked in the rear of the property, 2 in the front. So those 2 bullets would be under effective July 1, would be the restriction on the classes, and the difference in the numbers would be effective July 1. Does that make sense? I can give you the actual complete wording. So that's I think that, I hope,
Yes, yep.
encompasses everything that we discussed.
That's consistent
So
with the conversation,
With the
yes.
conversation. Thank you for.
Now, I'm going to open up the public hearing once again. Does anyone, I'm going to allow you to get up, and your friends or anybody else want to get up again and comment on any of these restrictions or licenses? If not, I'm going to ask, yes, go ahead.
We would probably like to see it done before July 1st. You know, it's a mess over there.
Mr. Freeman basically said, look, there's a lot of snow on the ground, and that it's difficult to move cars this time of the year. He's without somebody who was helping him, although it's helping is a stretch. But he pleaded with us it would take time to come into compliance if we so move, which we just did a moment ago with that. And so we didn't want to put an undue financial burden on him. Didn't know how long it would take, so we simply chose July 1 because the weather is going to be better in July 1 than it is now.
It wouldn't be any different than May 1st or April 1st, you know. The quicker we can get the mess cleaned up, the better I would feel.
Can you define mess in what you're talking about when you say
You've
that?
got trailers, you've got inoperable cars, you've got junk that's stored under tarps, now it's underneath the snow. It's the same thing every year, you know? Now, you know, we have a point to hold his feet to the fire. Let's, you know, belly up to the bar, do what you're gonna, you know, his license is in jeopardy if he doesn't do this stuff, so let's put it May 1st.
Let's ask him how he feels about that, and I'll ask him to get up after anybody else who wants to speak against it. Thank you, by the way. Mr. Freeman, your turn if you want to comment, but come to the microphone if you're going to say anything.
I just think that July 1st is really realistic for me now because I don't have any help, and I'm gonna have to do a lot of advertising, I do a lot of work myself too, so I just think that July 1st really should be acceptable.
You want to comment on any of the other restrictions which we forewarned you about in executive session, which Catherine just went over a minute ago?
Well, you know, I just had mentioned the concern about, you know, how much effort I put into having pictures and having, be able to have 5 cars on the front lawn. And, you know, we've gone through that for many years. And now you're talking about taking 3 of those cars off the front lawn. I just think it could be, you know, detrimental to my sales. So,
Anything else, Mr. Raymond? Okay. Anybody else? I see somebody standing up. I presume you want to come to the podium as opposed to go to the bathroom. Okay. Mr. Fallon?
John Fallon, 233 Main. I just, with all due respect, I would like to remind the board that, you know, this is Eddie's livelihood. Granted, mistakes have been made, no doubt. But, you know, he is trying to make a living. So I just want to pass that on.
We're sensitive to that, and we're sensitive to the neighbors have been complaining for years, and that
I
just
understand.
a balance
And
here.
obviously, mistakes have been made.
Yeah,
and,
having buses and RVs on the property and everything else like that is not what people envision for a used car dealership anyway. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
What about the request from, we heard from July 1 as opposed to an early date?
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
I think I heard 2 things, and one is one that we've not discussed before. I think I heard tonight from Mr. Curran that there's an issue of not just used cars, but there's scrap, junk, whatever, on the property, which is something that's an issue that's occurred before. I don't know that I don't think we're putting a time restriction on that. I think that could happen or should be cleaned up at any time. if
Yeah,
it
that's
is indeed
separate
there.
from the used car dealer license.
Right. So the July date really refers to reducing the number of cars and types of vehicles, right?
And the fact that they're operable.
So that it doesn't.
And the operable,
Yeah, so that
right.
it doesn't impact them financially because some of those may move or not move quickly. That was the sense of I thought of the conversation.
How do we at least enforce part of that? The part that's not, what should we do with the part that's not a part of this license, which I think.
I think that's something that's been an issue in the past with the neighbors, and
Yep.
we've worked with Mr. Freeman to clean up the outside of the property a few years ago now, and that's certainly a conversation we could have again, but again, separate from this license.
Well, I guess what I'm hearing is perhaps if that issue were resolved, and we know it's separate from this license, that maybe there'd be a little bit more tolerance to, not July, June, sometime in the spring, summer months.
I guess to Mr. Curran's point, you know, it's now winter and a lot of that stuff that's outside may be buried in snow. So it might be difficult to address it until the springtime. I mean, I've been to the property in quite a while, but I would expect that to be the case.
I would like to mention that we were advised by council and Peter's research that there are other things that we can do. For example, we can encourage a local police department to make inspections of the premises and make sure everything's in order, that Mr. Freeman is complying with whatever the license says, and that his books are in order, the paperwork is in order, so on and so forth, and that we intend, that's not only for Mr. Freeman, that's for all 3 licensees, so we're not going to pick on him on that. And that we have not done so in the past, so I've been advised, but we've requested the police department to do that occasionally again, to ensure that the licensee, he's complying with the license, and that there are other requirements that we're been advised that we will look at, and that we're not trying to drive anybody crazy here, but on the other hand, we want the business to be conducted according to the statutes, and we will. John, do you have any comment on the date, July 1 versus earlier date? Which is what we heard from Mr. Curran?
Yeah, I'm not particularly concerned whether it's July or May. I think, given the weather, we could end up with snow into March and April.
We could.
Which could make things even more difficult. I do think the July date is probably reasonable, given the other comment that we talked about, and that is better communication. Let's not wait until annual renewal of the license. If there are issues and difficulties, take initiative yourself, Mr. Freeman, come to us or the town administrator or the police, let them know, and at the same time, if we're aware of some issues, we'd like to have a conversation with you ahead of time.
Mhm.
What if we compromised on May 15th? The snow won't be on May 15th. What do you think?
Right, I think it's a reasonable
May
compromise.
15th?
And I think it's a hard date, it's not around May 15th. So I'm anticipating that on May 15th, or there a day or two before or after that, or whatever date we choose, that someone's going to go and look and make
Well,
sure
there won't
that
be
this
snow on the
is
ground May
happening.
15th unless,
Should not.
Oh.
Oh, you wanted to move town meeting to May, right, Jack?
Right, right.
Remember that one, Jack?
and people are going to regret not doing that.
I
One
think
of
they
these
are.
days, we're going to have a snowstorm in early April when we have our town meeting.
We'll try that again
Yeah.
next year.
We can blame the town of Hamilton for not agreeing with us. Shall I repeat that?
Going to amend this motion to say effective May 15th, license is restricted to operable Class D and Class M vehicles, 4-car garage and 2-car shed with a total of not more than 20 cars permitted on property. No more than 2 of the 20 cars may be parked in the front.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
There's only one other condition, but that's not effective so effective immediately. The hours of operation are 9 to 5.
Yeah. And by the way, that was a restriction we put in 2 years ago, which Mr. Freeman agreed to, but it was not, somehow it didn't get in the license for the last 2 years. We were just reinserting that in the license, and I reminded Mr. Freeman, that was my suggestion 2 years ago, and he recalled that. At least he nodded affirmatively, that he recalled that. Any further discussion?
All set.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you all for
Thank
coming.
you, everyone.
Welcome.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
again, you're
We're going
welcome to
back
stay
to
for the next 2 hours, and that,
Jack, if it's 2 hours, I'm going to be disappointed.
No way.
shoot me.
No, I would be shocked. Not even disappointed, I would be shocked.
There's something I want to watch at 8 o'clock on TV.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, so I want to have a three for here. So I have not forgotten the town administrator's update in the last 2
All
weeks.
right, all right.
Okay.
I did, I flipped right past it. Yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
gotta go back and find it now. Hold on one second. Jim spoke to the age-friendly community initiative. There's some more information in my report for those folks who may not necessarily be tuning into the meeting, just to give some context to the work that the Council on Aging has been doing and will continue to do over the next several months. So it's great. You know, Catherine, you talked about the fact that the Affordable Housing Trust is working to have a plan going forward, and that's really the same in terms of this. It's not necessarily that we're doing anything new or different, but we're being strategic about it, getting feedback from the residents. And this is something where, you know, Governor Baker's listed it as a community compact best practice now. The MMA is talking about it as a best practice at their conference next week. It's definitely, you know, Jim is on the leading edge. He mentioned Salem's really the only other community on the North Shore that's done any work, concerted work in this area. So it's great.
May I make a comment on that? So, as you said, the Affordable Housing Trust is getting a plan. The Open Space and Recreation Committee is doing a plan. This plan is going on. And we talked about this at our Affordable Housing Trust meeting last night. I think we have a tendency to do these plans vertically, in silos. And we
Really?
talked about ways, and we can have this conversation, for a later time, but we talked about ways of sort of bringing the information, a lot of which would overlap, but bringing the sort of plans together at some point, or maybe after the plans are all developed, bringing the information together so that.
Sounds like a master plan in some respects, but.
It does, but,
yes.
we're talking about things, and all of a sudden we started thinking, well, open space has really something to do with affordable housing, and elderly has, so.
The conversations, preliminary conversations we've had with the folks from UMass are that they, as part of their fact gathering, they would be looking at the different existing plans or ongoing plans. And really, a lot of what this initiative is about is stitching those together and having them coordinated through an approach that's reflective of trying to be more inclusive.
Sure.
With our older residents.
Sure.
So.
Great.
And then just a couple quick updates. A note that we've talked off and on now for the past year plus about transitioning to fire-based EMS, just for basic life support.
Yeah.
Last time we talked about it a couple months ago, we had targeted January 2nd as the go-live date, and we're still dealing with delays in terms of getting our final approvals from Medicare for billing purposes. So we have pushed back the start date. The fire department's completed all their other preparations at this point, but as soon as we have that approval, we'll set a new start date and we'll go live with that one-year pilot program. So.
Most Medicare approvals are retroactive to the date of application, by the way. You still need to have the.
Yeah, you still need to
Yeah,
have,
I think especially where it's the first
just-
time through for us. I think.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to accelerate it, I'm just, so.
Right.
But in the billing business with Medicare, I'm familiar with that.
And then another item that was talked about at a selectmen's meeting several months ago now was that Health was at the time drafting some new barn sanitation regulations, and they had public hearing and notified all of both the properties that would be impacted and the abutting neighbors. They finalized those regulations. They're posted on the website. They got sent to DEP. And essentially, they're looking at setting certain standards for property maintenance and animal care. And then they did include some minimum setback restrictions as well. And basically, all the residents who currently fall under these regulations are grandfathered. Their existing conditions are exempt, but any new applicants would have to go through an approval process with the Board of Health. So just wanted to circle back and let you know that process has now been completed. That's it.
I'll tell the office you can go home now.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Right, Officer Chandler.
Have a good evening.
That was thoughtful, Jack.
Well, less people in the room, okay. So now we're going on to open up the town meeting warrant.
wow,
So,
can you believe it's that time of the year already?
heck, can you believe it's that time of the year?
Believe it.
Means we really have to work hard here. And we do, by the way. So I move that the Board of Selectmen open the April 7th, 2018 annual town meeting warrant.
Second.
Do I have any further discussion? Like we have any choice here?
No, although I would note that thank you very much for the calendar, Peter, that's provided in here. The schedule, the budget preparation schedule, which includes this date, but.
And it's been fully updated because, obviously it's always a little bit of a work in progress as we go month to month. So everything that's happened is up to date, and then going forward, there were some minor changes on the new dates, but those have all been squared away.
Well, it's not on the, first of all, any further discussion?
None.
No.
All in
Nope.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
So just as additional commentary that based on the myriad of emails that all three of us have been receiving over the last couple of weeks, we're going to have a work cut out for us in the budget process this year, in which Peter's already done an outstanding job, but we'll do a lot of meetings and see if we can get this under the levy limit.
And there will be, that agenda item will be up for discussion at your next meeting, next Tuesday night, the 16th, because the Finance Committee starts their hearing process with the department heads the next time.
So our general approval of the budget as we see it, or discussion of any policy directives we might have before it goes to the
And I
finance
think it
committee.
really is that policy direction, as Jack
Yeah.
referenced, the school district's budget was a little delayed in its release, so we just got it last week.
I was trying to disguise that, Peter.
Well,
but
sorry.
Well, it's the elephant in the room, but
Yeah,
it is,
yeah, but I think at this point, it's gonna, cause us to have a conversation to understand really, big picture, what direction we're gonna take, in terms of our approach to the budget, based on where it leaves us, which is over the levy limit.
Thank you. Now we go back to Catherine.
so this is informational, and I'm going to quickly turn it over to Peter, but we've had a couple of, the Finance Committee has voted to approve a couple of reserve fund transfers over the last month or so. And Peter, if you want to outline those for us?
Sure, yeah, this is our first two reserve fund transfers of the year. So if you may recall, we reduced our reserve fund line item for this year down to $125,000, partly to try to get under the levy limit. Thankfully, it's been a relatively quiet year so far. These first two bring us down to, only spending 9% of the reserve fund. It's just over $11,000. And the two transfers that were approved by the Finance Committee, the first is we got $5,000 in grant funding from Maya to a tree inventory. Long talked about. I don't think I need to get into too much detail about it.
Keep it going.
But we, the balance of that, so we had applied for up to $10,000 in grant funding. It was a very competitive process this year, and essentially what they did to try to award to as many communities as possible is give partial awards and hope that that was enough seed money to have the towns be able to cover the balance. So in this particular case, the balance for the town is $6,350, and this will allow us to engage Bartlett Tree to come in and do a comprehensive inventory, tell us where our problem trees are, especially so that we have a plan going forward in terms of being a little more strategic in our removals. As we know, there's probably never enough money to fully fund the tree removal line item in our budget. It's just over $23,000, and it seems to be that, mid-year or thereabouts, we're up against having enough funding to continue to take care of those trees. And so I think the other important piece is that this will give us enough information to then have a plan going forward in terms of tree plantings, which is I think been a frequently voiced concern.
To me, it's like inventory in a business. You do your inventory first, so you know what you have, and then you know how to plan for future purchases and what you're going to get and where you need to put it. So this is a good baseline. Thank you so much.
If I may, as you know I do. So I was a question I know that is going to be asked once there's some obvious people walking around looking at trees, is that although this is a comprehensive assessment, it is specified and limited to 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 streets. So I just wondered if you could tell us and everyone what the criteria was that, obviously we can't do every street in town, but why were those 10?
My understanding in talking to Bill Tyak is that the streets that have been listed in this contract document are actually not the entirety of the roads that are going to be covered. So Main Street is going to be listed. There were a number of streets, and I don't have my notes with me, but I know that it was all the major streets in town that were covered by this. There were just
The Cherry Streets,
it was basically minor side streets were not going to
Right.
be covered in the contract.
I just wondered if anyone looked at, since a lot of this is to look at the assessment of the health of trees and relative to, power lines and things, that if they were looking at particular areas of town that might have had frequent power outages due to trees, and include that in the list. I didn't know how hard and fast that list was.
Isn't that covered by National Grid anyways?
Yeah,
Well,
only
yeah,
to
I
the
guess-
extent that it impacts utilities, but
Right.
yeah, but
Yeah,
you,
and
but
for
you.
inventory trees, and we know that there's a street or a portion of a street that often has power outages because trees, branches fall.
Yeah.
That seems like that
And that
would
was a
be-
question I actually had back when we submitted the scope of work and our grant application. And I remember at the time that Bill said that this list was not hard and fast, I guess, and that all of the major streets, including Main Street, because I had a list of 3 or 4 that
Right, Main Street was an obvious
why,
exception.
yeah, why those weren't in there. But they're all going to be covered.
Okay.
It's
Well,
basically going to
great.
be all the
And
major streets. In
I don't say that in any way to take away from the fact that this is great stuff, and I'm very happy
It's a
that
good
at least
start,
it's
yeah.
starting. Okay, thank you, that's all I have on that. Is there another?
And then the second transfer request is for $5,500 for an actuarial analysis of our OPEB liability. That's something that is now required every 2 years. It used to be every 3. So it wasn't funded in this year's budget, but it's required by GASB for 74 and 75. And so we are working with the same firm that we did the last time around that prompted the adoption of the policy that we have in place now in terms of funding our OPEB. That's it.
Okay, next up, we have an appointment.
Did we vote? Oh, we don't have votes,
No
I'm
votes.
so sorry.
Exactly.
You're right, no votes, just information.
The zoning board of appeals, as everyone knows, there are 3 not everyone knows, 3 permanent members, or full-time members. And as a result of a bylaw change we had at the last town meeting, we now have the ability to appoint up to 3 alternate members. It's important to have an alternate member because if one of the permanent members is unable to attend a particular session, and then unless that person jumps through some hoops and gets him or herself up to speed about what happened at the meeting, this person would be ineligible to vote when voting actually occurred on whatever was before the zoning board of appeals, and that had occurred in the past. We currently have 1 alternate, excuse me, with 2 vacancies. One is a 3-year term, and another is 1+ years, according to the thing, and that Wenham resident Dana Began has applied for this. She sent in a letter of interest. She was interviewed by the, which is not a requirement, but nevertheless interviewed by the zoning board, and that they wrote us a letter basically saying, they'd be delighted if she could join us as an alternate. And that it's for a 3-year term, and that so I had coffee with Dana recently, and that I think she's well qualified, she's eager, she's accomplished, and I only had 1 reservation, which I expressed to her, and that had to do with the fact that her husband is chairman of the finance committee, and that there could be something possibly that comes up that might be advocated or not advocated by the finance committee that also has to could come before the zoning board of appeals. I have an example, but I don't want to necessarily articulate it. And so I asked if she would be willing to recuse herself of that apparent conflict arose, and she said absolutely. I don't think it would arise, but nevertheless, it's possible. The FinCom could be strongly publicly advocating for something that would go before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I would appreciate that if she could recuse herself, if indeed her husband was still on the Finance Committee, particularly the chairman, and that she saw right away and agreed. And so that I didn't have any other reservations, and that, did you also talk?
I did have I've had a couple of conversations with her. I've been very impressed with her work that she's done on boards that she's on now, and think she will be a very good ZBA member. And I think she's genuine when she says that she would certainly recuse herself from anything. She would not be.
Yes, but I just wanted to.
So, no, it's good.
bring it
That's a
up.
good question. But I trust that she will actually follow through with that, knowing her.
Yeah, it's unlikely to come up, but if it does come up, that, we want to, anyway, so that, John, you have any comments?
No, I know her also, but not as well as you two have.
I only just met her, so I can't say I know her well, but
Okay.
she was,
We had a longer conversation with her.
I did. She's an interesting job. She's in the compliance area. She's been around and that, had some prestigious jobs and that, so,
Some
She's very
experience-
professional.
And has some
Very
experience on a
professional.
town board or committee, which is.
yes,
a
she
good
is,
thing,
and
too.
in her letter of interest, she articulated that. So I'll move that, let me just read the motion then, and that, I move to appoint Dana M. Began as an alternate member, excuse me, of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term beginning January 2nd, really?
January,
2nd, 2018?
do we want to say January 10th?
We're not going to make this
Normally we do it-
retroactive, so
Normally we do it the day of, so January 9th. This was from last week.
that's
That was when we thought,
when we didn't have that meeting?
right, that,
That person upstairs didn't do something? Okay. January 9th, 2018, and ending June 30, 2019.
second.
Further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Dana. Good luck. All right, let's see. Town Administrator's Performance Evaluation.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, that.
We're going to skip that tonight.
Pass over that for a while.
He'll shoot me.
Yeah, you would, yeah. Maybe not, but he might
don't
not.
think so.
He might be mad.
Well, so let me give background, and that we, a few months ago, went through a fairly comprehensive evaluation of Peter's performance, particularly concerning his 24-25 goals that he came up with, and we all felt that he, certainly all the major goals, he fully accomplished those, and there's a couple of minor ones that, he shouldn't have 25 goals anyway, and that he should only have 5 or 6 or 7 tops. But anyway, he did a great job. So his contract calls for us to have an evaluation, a more formal evaluation this time. We discussed this and felt that each of the selectmen was going to review, in their mind, or Peter's performance and communicate with me about whether they felt that Peter's still doing a good job, and there's nothing negative that they wanted to bring up that wasn't, there was nothing negative brought up before anyway. Anything new that they want to discuss with Peter, and that I don't think you and I connected, John, but I haven't heard anything bad from you, so that, and Catherine and I have connected. So we want to basically communicate with Peter that it's a unanimous opinion of this board. In fact, I should probably read the vote and then ad-lib some more. The board expresses its continued satisfaction with Peter Lombardi's performance as town administrator and moves to commence contract negotiations for a successor agreement which will go into effect July 1, 2018. So, and I've shared the results of the board's informal deliberation about his performance with Peter, and this motion basically expresses that continued satisfaction of the board, which allows us now to go to the next step, which would be to basically review his compensation and other aspects of his contract for an expected renewal.
I second that motion.
Further discussion? Have I covered the bases enough here?
I think so.
Think
I
so?
just want to make sure I don't
Yes,
screw
I
this
do.
up. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
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 I don't want to. Good. Congratulations, Peter.
Thank you, Chair.
Move to the next step.
Right. So let's see what's next.
I think we,
Other matters that may not reasonably anticipate, I anticipate absolutely everything.
always, it's so good about.
We did the used
things
car
I like
business,
about
and
it.
now we have open session joint with audit committee.
Oh, we have minutes? Is that
Well,
what
wait a minute, it says minutes, right, open session with the audit committee, excuse me, minutes. Do we have any minutes here?
Yeah, there's one session, one. Which would be John's, I guess.
Yep.
Sure. Let me go big.
Want to read the motion, John, to help you out?
Yeah.
He's
I
looking.
move to approve the
Okay.
joint board of...
Go ahead. Okay.
No, you're on the page, go ahead.
All right. I move to approve the joint Board of Selectmen and Audit Committee meeting of June 17th, 2016.
Second that motion.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Great.
That's it. Now we're going to go into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, that is the town administrator.
I would second that motion.
John?
Yes.
Yes.
And not to
I didn't say
return-
further discussion, I should have.
And we're not going to return to open
And
session.
we're not going to return to open session.
Yes, or I, whichever.
Aye.
Directly from executive session.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that was a roll call.
Was.
Great.